Sammy's is one of the biggest camera stores in Los Angeles, so let's go rate their workshop. Just got here and there's no parking. Like, I've never seen Sammy's like this. Okay.
For CNEI, generally you don't need to do a lot of tests. The reason why on the film world they do tests is because it's rely on temperature and the chemical, which is if the temperature is wrong or if the chemical ratio is wrong, you won't get your right result. That's the reason you need to do more tests on the film, because since we are digital, and you can pretty much rely on doing. However, please, before you starting to use CNEI to do any serious job, you should have a lot of practice. So you need to master the workflow before you bring this workflow to your client. Okay, let's talk about the latitude distribution, right? I already finished the first benefit. Let's talk about the latitude distribution. And so do you remember I told you when you change the ISO, your latitude change a little bit and everything. What if I don't want to change my ISO, but change my latitude? Okay, sorry. So what you can do, like for example, if I'm shooting a horror movie, so let me explain back for a little bit what that means. So this is 18% grid line, right? We always talk about the dynamic range. The camera have 14 stop of dynamic range or 15 or 16. For example, Venus is a 16 and FX3, FX30 is about 14 stop. So at your base ISO 800, you got 6 stop over 18% grid. If you're not familiar, 18% grid is almost like your facial color, right? And you got 8 stop lower than your facial color. That's the Sony standard dynamic range distribution. It's actually perfect for YouTube, for TV, for documentary, and daytime view, no problem at all. What if I'm shooting a horror movie, dark scene, right? And aliens, right? Godfather, old man, smoke cigar in a dark room. What's the most bright area? The cigarette. Do I really need 8 stop on that there? No. I want this. I only want a 4 stop over facial. I want as much shadow detail on the shadow detail, so I can see all the texture on the hair, the wrinkles on the clothes, or the facial expression, and even a reflection in the eyes. Right? That's how you want to do it. So how do we do it? We still shoot at the base ISO 800. However, we're gonna change our EI to 800. No, sorry, change our EI to 200. How do we do that? CNEI mode. If you go to main here, make sure turn on the log shooting mode, put on the CNEI. So the CNEI, there's 2 different. So flexible ISO is the first method that even you shooting log, you can still change your ISO. For YouTube level, documentary, that's totally fine. Okay. For CNEI and for cinema production and CNEI quick, actually it's automatically switch between the 2 base. If you want to do brighter, you jump to another base. CNEI, that give you is everything needs to be manually controlled, but give you the most precise control. Okay? So let's select the CNEI. Same thing, every time we select the CNEI, we want to select the SCAM3, .cine or SCAM3. This part I can talk to you a little bit later. So once we go here, by the way, let me turn off my SNQ mode. Okay, at the CNEI here, we can see our base is 800, right? So that's the EI value we put on here. And did you see that's the 6? What that mean? 6 stop about 18%, right? That give you some tricks. So for example, if I'm gonna shooting a car commercial in the desert, a lot of reflection, red, fiery, sparkling, what are we gonna do? Of course, I'm gonna increase my EI. You see? Now I got 8 stop. 8 stop on the brightness, only 6 stop on the shadow detail. Right? Same thing. If I'm shooting a car commercial, the darkest area will be higher. Yes.
So that number represents the highlight information. Is there a way to see the shadow information when you're?
Shadow information will be the 6.
Okay, but
right?
not in
so
camera.
Not in camera, but pretty much you need to remember that. Right? You remember, okay, my camera is 14 stop dynamic range, so I'm 8 on the top, I got 6 under it. Okay, that's one trick. Oh, let's go back to our horror movie. Hey, 200 EI. Done. I'm gonna have 4 stop in the brightness and 10 stop in the shadow detail. Okay, however, you're recording at 800 ISO, but the color is like there. So what do you need to do? But let's say the monitor actually, the monitor you're gonna see very, very dark. Then you need add light or open up your aperture, right? To make sure the brightness level hit the desired you want. Then in post, you're gonna drag it back to the dark level that you desire. Does that sound familiar?
So nothing's actually changed, just the monitoring has changed.
No, actually the whole dynamic range distribution, everything changed. When the monitor change, you should base on your monitor to make sure your exposure is correct on the monitor. When your monitor is correct, actually your file, when you open your files, you will have a huge surprise. When you're recording this one, when you add on the light, when you add the EI exposure correctly, your image will be very bright. There's no shadow detail at all. In post, because you need to kind of remove how many stops? 2 stops, right? We need to push the brightness exposure 2 stops back. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
I usually rely on my light meter monitor. So when you're telling me if I'm shooting at 800 base ISO, I should switch my light meter, let's say, to 200 because I always want to overexpose, expose to the right.
Yep.
But also I have to change my exposure index so they will all match.
Yes, you're right. So actually, I like you said the word exposure to the right. Actually, CNEI is a scientific way of exposure to the right. So you don't need a guess, right? By exposure to the right of 2 stop, I can precisely control the lighting. As you said, you have a light meter of 200. I can precisely set up my lighting. The way I push my exposure to the left in post to matching my targeted brightness, you will have a perfect. Yeah.
So you're only able to achieve that dynamic range if you, say, are using the FX6 and you have the program of the low, medium, and high, and you say that.
So the low, medium, high actually is a quick switch.
Okay.
It's not, so whether you can customize that, it doesn't change your base ISO or doesn't not change your dynamic range distribution.
Okay, it's just a monitoring of.
It's not the monitoring. The low, mid, high is basically that's more for flexible ISO operations. When you put on the CNEI, I'm not sure if you can still use the low, medium, high. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm still confused. So I'm shooting at 800 ISO, right?
Yes.
And I want to get down to 200.
So let me show you an example.
Okay,
Later,
that'd be great.
later I'll show you a little bit example, right?
Sounds good.
So now we're gonna that's one direction we already talked about, right? That's basically that's most easy way to understand is a scientific way of exposure to the right based on the number, stop, and the brightness. Okay. So if we can exposure to the right, we exposure to the left. Of course we can, right? With CNEI, we can exposure to the left. So for example, as I said, when we shoot a car commercial, we push the CNEI, the EI number to the highest one, we preserve the highlight. But we're gonna see a lot of overexplode. Same as you said, you change your light meter into 2500, say, oh, too bright. Let's change the shutter speed. If we cannot change shutter speed, we cannot change the aperture, variable ND or blend, control the light, cut down the light. And what happened when you turn off your footage? Too dark, right? In post, increase your exposure, and you got the perfect what you want to preserve the highlighting information. So I give you an example. Sorry, and I got this notice of this seminar for very short notice, 2 days. So I didn't have time to shoot my own test footage, and I gathered this one from YouTube. Actually, if you want, you can write down this YouTube link and you can have a look. And he's explained pretty good with some example. So basically, this is how you shoot at the base ISO and 800. On that hand side is base ISO 800 with 3 stop ND, and they push into 3200 base ISO. You see, So what you're gonna see is a little bit harder to see on this image, and we have put this one with the waveform. You can see a little bit better. It's still a little bit harder, right? And you can see on the top, on the tree, on the sky. I don't know if you can see that. You can have a little bit more detail on the sky. For example, blue, cloud, and everything. So if you're shooting a project, if you wanted to keep all the highlight information, actually you need the exposure to the left. Okay? If you want to preserve the shadow information, exposure to the right. If you want to preserve the highlight information, exposure to the left. But Samy EI is the tool to help you to precise explosion. Okay? And you can see the waveform is all the bright information is kind of shifted down a little bit. Why shift down a little bit? We give them a little bit more dynamic range, right? We give them a little bit more dynamic range on the top. That's the reason we can bring down the overall brightness level going down a little bit. However, there's an issue. Look at the tree. When you have a regular, you have the tree, you can still see the detail, the leaf, and everything. On that one, it's almost like a crushed, right? And that's the downside. Why the tree got crushed? Because we remove some of the dynamic range from the shadow information and give to the highlight. Okay.
Is it like a rule of thumb, if you want to preserve highlights exposed to the left, if you want to preserve shadows and low stuff exposed to the
So
right?
normally I don't like the word exposure to the right or exposure to the left. So the technical term you should say, if you want to have more dynamic range to the highlight, you should have a higher ER number compared to your ISO. If you want to have, let me just bring out the chart. That's probably a little bit easier. So basically, if you want to have more dynamic range on the bright, you should have a higher EI number. If you want to have more shadow information, you should have a lower EI number.
So more in the highlights, higher the number, more shadow, more in the
Yes.
highlights, lower the number.
So put in mind, this is very, very counterintuitive, right? Because theoretically, like if we want to keep the highlight, you need to have higher ISO in another word, right? If you want to preserve the shadow information, you need to have a lower ISO.
Is there a mix between, like on the FX3 or the FX6, of choosing between that 800 or the 12,800 and trying to find that like middle stop where you're really going low on the 12,800 number or high on the 800 number?
So what it does is actually the dynamic range got to reset. The dynamic range distribution based on the two base. Like say we have 800, right? Or we have a 2500. You see the dynamic range distribution is the same. Right? So basically, is the dynamic range distribution is a base starting from your base ISO. Yeah.
If I change the EI, does it affect the zebras or any of the other exposure indications? Zebras stay
No.
correct?
Later, I'm going to show you how to use a zebra to correctly exposure the S-log3. I don't think it won't change.
They stay at 800.
Yes.
They're still okay.
Yeah.
So they can be relied on.
Yes.
Even if the display is not correct.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah. Okay, so that's the part. So do you have any question regarding on the Sony? Now, first of all, let's have a look at the Sony S-log3. So that's the S-log3 compared to on the other side. I put the different brand. Okay, there's no right or wrong. Please understand that the log curve. There's no right or wrong, no good or bad. It's basically what you need to select what's good for you. But I want to highlight why the Sony S-log is a little bit different compared to any other one. When you see the S-log2, which is you can see the curve shape is very familiar with all other major manufacturers. Why? Because at that time, most of the log curve developed to view and in a theater. That means in a dark environment without the light. That's the result. You can see it have a longer shoulder, right? So actually keep the dark information a little bit low and also clip a little bit earlier. Because of why? In a movie theater, you cannot handle like 2000 nit of brightness. That's a traditional like a movie lines, right? You can see it have a pretty goes up very quick. And the S-log3 actually we developed with the newer technology, new digital cinema. I think we are the first one actually develop this new curve. So there are a couple of things what we changed. Number one, we changed the 18% grid from 32% of the brightness RE to 41%. But when you look at the other one, still pretty much is all at 30%, 39%. It's still based on the movie, right? But number one. Number two, you can see is actually we let the image starting to show brightness a little bit earlier. As a result, the image is not too dark. Right? A lot of cinema cameras, and people complain, cinema camera too dark. Why? It's because of the log curve. And as log 3, you can relate it a little bit brighter. And also for the highlighted information, we can preserve the highlight a little bit more. That's the reason a lot of the people, especially the people who use the new media, OTT production, or YouTube, and the documentary, all the people who is not view in a dark environment, they prefer S-Log 3 a lot. This is because for that reason.
Can you just repeat that, what you just said, like 2 seconds ago?
Sorry?
Just, if you can just back it up, like 4 or 5 words, I didn't quite catch something. Just repeat what you just said about about it being too dark.
So basically the traditional, the log curve is a little bit dark. It's
Right.
for viewing in a dark environment. For example, in your
That
movie
word,
theater.
ramen? It sounds like you're saying ramen.
Environment. Oh,
I
sorry.
can't, because I couldn't quite read the list either.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. Is dark environment.
Dark environment, thank you, okay, so dark
Okay.
environment, got it, okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about
One more question.
Yes.
How does S-Log3 compare, if at all, to PQ?
What do you mean the color space? So normally we have the yellow one, which is called the BT709, right? Or ET709, ITU709, and also we have the P3, which is the cinema color. And the Sony camera, and what we do, and the way we recording at S-Gamma3.cine, and it have a much bigger color space than whatever you need. So basically, we prepare more material than you need. And one of the things, I don't know if you play or check with other manufacturers' color gamut and everything, and when you go back, you can do a little bit check. And the Sony one, if you pay attention, is all the 3 corners to the 709. It's almost a very similar distance. That's the reason when we recovery, after you shoot in S-Log, doing the 709 recovery, you always got a little bit more precise compared to other brand. I won't say other brand is not precise, but actually that fit into the 709 workflow very well. Okay, and that will be the SDR color space. And how about for HDR? For the HDR, most of the HDR use the BT2020 color space, right? And our color space is S-Gamma3, which is still bigger than the BT2020. So it's very easy to map into there. The ACES APU, that is probably is more for future technology. Currently, not a lot of people use that. Okay, so then basically we put all the color together and everything. It's a little bit confusing, but basically a rule of thumb, what time when you should select the S-Gamma3 or S-Gamma3.cine is if for most production, especially if you use SDI, you're comfortable to use S-Gamma3.cine. Okay, when you're gonna use S-Gamma3, and only if you have a professional color management team. Okay, especially like for example, and I think I'll put some tips here. So number 1 tips, the color gamut must be match the S-Log3. So basically S-Log3 is matching the S-Gamma3. Generally, do not select other one, right? So, however, that's the general Sony recommendation. I do see some people actually they try to use a combination to have their own flavor, right? Feel free to do it and give it a try. If you can find a mix with a gamma curve and the color space come out your style, feel free to give it a try, right? So choose the right color gamut. Number 1 is S-Gamma3.cine. It will fit most of the production. S-Gamma3, only you have a professional color management team. And also put in mind, when you use S-Gamma3, your post cost probably going to be a little higher than S-Gamma3.cine. Especially you need to do the color grading and fine tune the color, the workflow and a little bit longer. And also, if you are doing VFX or chroma key shooting, green screen or blue screen, please make sure to use, you are the DP, you are the camera operator, you decide what kind of exposure level you want to do, right? However, on the S-Log3, in order to get the best dynamic range distribution, in other words, in order to get the full potential of the camera, you need exposure to correct. Because if you exposure too bright, you lose some of the bright highlight. So what happened is here is when you shoot on the S-Log, when you look at the graphic, you run at 18% gray. 18% gray, you should be at a 41% of RRE. So when you exposure to the when you explore X3, okay, here. So what the no, okay, let me put it down here now. So normally what you need to do, you need to put it onto the zebra display. Anybody use the zebra before? Yeah, when you have the zebra display and you need to turn it on, and also make sure the zebra on the C1 and at here you can change it to 41%. 41%. Normally for me, I just plus minus 2. Okay, so let me see. I have the zebra on.
41%, 18% gray?
Yes. So basically what it does is, and once you set in there, I'm sorry I don't have an 18% gray card, but once you turn on the zebra and set the custom zebra 041, and if you have a gray card, put on the front and do the exposure control, and when your gray card shows the zebra, you have perfect exposure. That means your gamma curve, we go to the gamma curve, you have the perfect gamma curve. There's no missing information. Okay, now we're gonna have a look at think about it like an exposure to the right. So what happened when we use the exposure to the right? So basically what we did when we expose to the right, we kind of shift the gamma curve up, right? 18% gray is not 41% anymore. For example, if we have two-step push, your 81% is already getting into maybe 50 or 60%. Your facial color will be brighter, your whole image will be brighter. But what happened is your top brightness, the high dynamic range area, you are missing because the clip is getting smaller. And also the noise floor, you raise up the noise floor. So basically the shadow information you put it up a little bit. You don't record all the shadow information. As a result, you got a better signal to noise ratio, right? That's a traditional exposure to the right without CineEI workflow or working system. So how do you correctly do the CineEI exposure to the right, right? You remember we set 41%, we set our camera correct. Now we're gonna change our EI. We use our EI to 200, your image became dimmer.
Okay, so I'm gonna give them a 7 because you could barely hear the instructor. It was so loud. They were still conducting business in the room, and also you could barely understand the instructor because he had a really, really thick accent. But ultimately, I mean, it's a free workshop, so it wasn't terrible, and I still learned a lot, and I'm just happy that I was able to kind of experience that and then just